like the juice.
And so I said to him, "Gee, Doc, wrecked him, damn near killed him." What's up, everybody? We're trying this again, but I'm not playing the theme song because I don't know if maybe the theme song's blowing Zoom out, and it creates all havoc where Mike can no longer hear me. So, with all that being said, welcome to everybody to another insane episode of the consistently inconsistent episode of the What's in Your Head podcast. I'm going to do a little live sound check. Okay, the volume's working. So anyhow, as I was saying before, apparently you guys couldn't hear me. If you want to support the show, which God knows we need it, we need to get a new computer in here post haste so we can have all the production in the background. Please head over to whatsinyourhead.com or d-410.com. Click on that Patreon link, sign up and subscribe. It only costs you $1 a month, and that'll go a long way to support what we do here at the show. But I was also saying earlier that, yeah, might help if I hit record. So now we're recording, but people don't know they missed anything because we have no theme song. So anyhow, as I was saying earlier, while you're over there, if you want to click on the YouTube channel and subscribe to our YouTube channel, you can see our other content, like me finally falling out of my kayak for the first time in 3 years. But we won't talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll save that for another day because we have more important things to talk about tonight. And to bring us into that category of the important things we need to talk about tonight, I introduce to you Mike, no use for a last name. So, Mike, what's going on, and how did you get so annoyed that you wanted to breach this conversation for tonight on tonight's show?
Well, how I got so annoyed is a lifetime of living. Um, I think I wanted to bring this to light because I think there are very few people that are like me that are out there that are they look at their own generation and they go, "Wow, my generation absolutely fucking sucks."
Better than looking at your own genitals and saying, "Wow, my genitals
Very
absolutely."
true. I don't think I would want
Actually,
to
one
feel
can make
that.
the argument, unless you're a homosexual, normally a straight man looks down and says, "Wow, my genitals absolutely suck," which is why we all love the female body so much. But
That's right.
that's another conversation for another time. Side note: since I had COVID, unverified, I'm off soda. Down thing is I don't have soda to put in my bourbon anymore, so now I'm drinking it. I'm drinking it straight like a real man.
Oddball.
Real quick, let me just say this. I know we're trying not jump all over conversations, but you ever met those people who smoke and then they get sick? They get like pneumonia, and they're like, "Man, I was sick."
You mean cigarette smokers?
Yeah, they're like, "Man, I was
Yeah.
sick for 3 weeks. I haven't had a cigarette in 3 weeks." Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you quit smoking? No, I'm smoking again. It's like, wait a minute. You were sick for 3 weeks, yeah. You didn't have a cigarette for 3 weeks, correct? So you basically went through withdrawal while being sick, And the first thing you did was buy. Yeah, gotcha. Same thing. I was so sick, dehydrated, so much pain. Only thing I was drinking was water and Gatorade, and I didn't want to be that guy. So now I'm better and no soda. I'm like, I got myself through the caffeine withdrawals, got myself over the heavy desire to crack a Mountain Dew. I will say, I did open one bottle of Mountain Dew since being sick, and I threw 3/4 of it away. There's nothing better than being back at the spot where you taste soda for what it is, and that is a carbonated, acid-filled mess. So when you drink it, you get sick stomach. So I'm trying to stay off the soda. I'm hoping this will help me lose my weight. But now that we said that, if you're wondering why I'm drinking straight bourbon tonight, because I don't know, is Gatorade a good bourbon mixer? I don't want to be the guy to find out. I need to send that to the drink tester on TikTok. Have you been watching him?
No.
He's this
I
redneck. He's an alcoholic,
Okay.
and he tries these different drinks, which boring. Then it all changed when he bought a Soda Stream.
Oh shit.
People making him drink carbonated Fireball, carbonated moonshine. He drank an entire glass of carbonated soy sauce. It's a hot mess. He's fucking
Was that
hilarious.
is that I think maybe you sent it to me. I don't remember who sent it to
Yeah,
me,
he's
but
like
somebody
long
sent
hair,
me
hillbilly kind of guy.
yeah, he carbonated milk.
Carbonated milk
He
and also
carbonated
Everclear.
milk.
Made him drink Everclear and full blown moonshine.
Outstanding.
And it's interesting, depending on the makeup of the liquid, some of it overflows with 3 pumps and some of it doesn't. And
Yeah.
the sad thing is, this guy's such an alcoholic that he like considers this full glass filled up a normal shot. So there's that.
Well, before we get on to generational stuff and millennials and stuff like that, you brought up a good point about um, people who quit smoking and then 3 weeks later after they get sick or whatever and they get better, they start smoking again.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, because I went through basic training, and before I went to basic training, I smoked back a day. Went to basic training, they cut that shit out. No dipping, no smoking, no nothing, and went all the way through basic training, got out of
See,
basic
that just
training.
shows you how different it is, because in World War II, they were just running the obstacle course while you were smoking unfiltered
Yeah,
luggage train.
yeah. And when I got out of basic training and I went back home for a little while, I first thing I did, I think, actually on base, they told us before we graduated, they said, um, while you're on base here, you still have to abide by all the rules. Okay, whatever. But even though we were with our parents or with our family members or whatever, driving around, hanging out, showing, the base off and whatnot. And I remember one of the first things I did was put a dip in, because my dad dips. And I put a dip in and I was like, man, I haven't felt that in a long time. It was like almost that nicotine rush again. And then when I got back home, I finally smoked my first cigarette, and it was the same thing. I got that nicotine rush, and it was like, why did I waste? That was such a waste. Like
Yeah.
after I got out of it, I was able to breathe again. I wasn't like choked up or out of breath or anything, and I was in probably the best shape of my life. And just to reintroduce that to your body and to do that to yourself, I mean, it was horrible.
Yes, there's sometimes you find yourself in a situation, whether you're sick or at boot camp, where things aren't in the most desirable aspect and you're being withheld from certain things. And so, but if those certain things aren't really healthy for you, once you get back to where you can participate in those things, maybe just not.
Don't.
Yeah, especially when you get old like me.
No, I just thought that was an interesting offshoot, because I kick myself in the ass for that, because you know I mean, I vape now, and I only vape because I quit smoking, and I still have to have that vice, that picking something up, you know
The
puffing
oral
on it or whatever.
fixation.
Yeah. And
But let me ask you this, because I've seen other people do this who quit smoking and then they vape, but then they seem to hit the vape more than the cigarettes for that oral fixation, almost to the point where it sounds like you have like Darth Vader in the other room. It's just not...
well, I've with vaping, like when I first started vaping, I didn't start vaping because I quit smoking. I vape now because I don't smoke. I used to vape a long time ago too, while I was still smoking. So if I was somewhere where I couldn't smoke, I just vape. So the idea behind it was, um, when you go to a vape shop or something like that, back when it was before it became universally popular, you get this big mod and you get the 18650 batteries and you get a deck and you build your own
Look at this
coils
nerd. He's
Yeah.
still talking battery specs.
That's right.
Were you a cloud
And-
chaser?
Huh?
Were you a cloud chaser?
Oh fuck yeah. Back in the day?
I never understood the cloud chasing thing. You want to recreate the effect of hitting a bong, but you don't get the impact and the effect that the bong gave you, thus justifying. Stop chewing on my chair, you dickhead. Justifying the amount of vape juice that you're taking in.
Well, I don't know. It was just, it was enticing in the beginning. It was interesting. It was, it wasn't so much that, oh, I sucked in this vape and I blew out this big cloud. It's what can I build to make the cloud bigger,
Gotcha.
thicker, things like that. It's not so much about the clouds as much as it is the building process and the tinkering, and that's what I really liked about it.
What can I do to force myself to buy more super expensive, overmarked up vape juice? You know,
Oh, I was $100 a week at one point.
what's crazy is when the vape thing came into vogue. First, you had the little tiny ones, right? And Carrie's sister and Carrie's mom's boyfriend at the time started their own booths and stores because at that time it wasn't being regulated,
Yeah,
and you could buy all the content to make your own stuff.
yeah,
And I would see like the when you're buying those $25 bottles, it literally was like $3.50 worth of material. The margins on that
yeah.
shit is so insane.
Oh yeah,
Which is why you can see those stores that have they paying $2,000 a month for the storefront, and they have a pool table in there that no one uses,
yeah.
TVs that no one watches, and then like just a corner of it is all vape stores. Like, are you guys laundering money? Oh no, that's just you have so much margin in this crap that it's insane.
Well, I used to go to this place before work. It's called Vape House in Murphy, North Carolina, and it was in the back of an antique store. So like I don't know if there was just like a partnership or if it was family or
Probably
whatever,
just
but
renting.
you would
Probably just renting a corner in the back of the shop.
something because you would walk in to the main door of the antique shop and then you would walk all the way to the back and in the corner was a dude hanging out with a
Mixing
bunch of
juice.
different mods and batteries and all kinds of shit back there and he would sell all that shit.
Yep.
And it was a legitimate business. It was just sketchy how it was set up and where it was located, but
Well, I don't know about now, but when that stuff started about 10 years ago, most of those juices were mixed on people's coffee table in their living room, to be all honest with you. But let's get back to the task at hand,
yeah.
and that is millennials.
So the millennial. A lot of controversy over the millennial. I'd say a lot of millennials from the older generation get a very bad rap. And I would agree with that. Um, the I would agree with the uh, I guess portrayal, maybe the word that I'm looking for, but I would, growing up as a millennial, like I kind of got the best
Prejudice,
of both worlds.
perhaps.
Huh?
The prejudice.
Sure. I grew up kind of getting the best of both worlds because my father was born in 1961.
Okay.
My mother was born in 62. So, what is that? Is that the boomer generation or is that right after the boomers?
Oh, I can tell you. No, baby boomers are technically 45 through 52 because that's why they're the baby boomers. That's when all their parents came home from the war and started
Right.
getting pregnant.
And then the Xers came after that, right?
Yes. Let me give you the official baby boomer dates. Let's see. Baby boomers is 1946 to 1964 ish. Gen X dates. Gen X is going to be from 1965 to 1980. So yeah, that all checks out.
Okay. So technically they are boomers. They're just late boomers.
Who's that? Your
Um,
parents?
Yeah.
They're born in the 50s?
61 and 62.
No, they're Gen X's. Gen X is 65, so yeah, 62. Yep, so they're late stage baby boomers.
Yeah.
So you could technically say, okay, boomer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Technically I could, although I wouldn't because my dad would probably punch me in the face.
No, but your kid would say it to you because he has no idea that you're not even a Gen Xer.
Right. So what's interesting is that, like, I grew up with, because a lot, I guess, would I be considered an elder millennial?
You're early. Yeah, you're early.
So, you know, being the son of boomers, and the boomers had kids that were usually the Gen Xers, and then the early millennials and whatnot. So, I kind of got the best of both worlds, of like that old school, work, put in your time, and do, work ethic and stuff like that. But then I also got kind of the new school, like, oh, technology and social media, and kind of that mentality of like, don't tell me what to do, and uh, it's hard to explain, I guess. um so what's interesting to me is I actually hate my generation, because to me they're a bunch of whiny fucking, me, all I care about is me. Everybody got a trophy. When I was growing up, I didn't get a trophy for everything. I mean, you probably didn't either.
It's interesting. Yes, kind of we did. And I was in Kentucky. We were kind of the early. You got to keep in mind, my parents were the baby boomers, and I was born in '78.
Yeah.
So that means my mom and my father were in their primes in the '60s and '70s,
Right.
which is dead nuts in the middle of the hippie generation. And so I'm not saying my
Wait, the
parents were
what?
the hippies,
Oh, the
Vietnam era,
hippie.
the actual full blown hippies, because they're rebelling against their parents who were the greatest generation, the World War II generation. So when you have an entire generation of parents where 82% of the fathers either served in the military or served over war, they have the discipline of being in the military.
Yeah.
And so all that goes into the work life. And that's why, it was people had no problem standing in line for sporting events and being patient in traffic because they're used to the hurry up and wait mentality of being in the military. And so every generation's key role is to rebel against their parents' generation. Okay, well,
Sure.
if your parents are all high and tight, served in the military, high ho patriotism, we fought against the communists. Well, if you want to piss off your parents, what are you going? Okay, well, we're going to be pro-communist and we're going to be pro-socialist and we're going to be hippies. That's basically the hippies were. They were, even though we're fighting against communists in Vietnam, they were anti-Vietnam. But I
Hmm.
say all that to say this: that's when some of this self-esteem movement, everyone should be included movement, start to happen. And so, to your point, we had what was called track and field in Kentucky.
Yeah.
I know in Ohio they referred to it as field day. Every little area, that's basically an elementary school. At least back in the day, you would have, you know, long jumps. Not like your high school, high school authorized sports teams, but for example, in Hamilton we had the long run, which was we run around the entire distance of the school, and the first three get a ribbon, and everybody else got a participation ribbon. We had them. They were like, I remember first place got a white one. No, first place was like red. Second place was blue. I think third place was green, and then everybody else who ran the race got a white ribbon.
Right.
It was in fact a participation ribbon.
Right.
And then I remember in little league, I played baseball maybe God second or third grade. That was it. Maybe first grade. I couldn't. I was out in right field. I couldn't play for shit. I still got baseball trophies. Didn't win them. We never went to the World Series of Little League, so clearly those were participation trophies. So yes,
Sure.
us as Gen Zs, we were at the early stages of that.
Right. Well, what's interesting is, I did say, I don't remember getting participation stuff. I mean, yeah, I got awards and stuff like that when I was in school, elementary school in particular. I think every kid kind of did an award ceremony or whatever. But the main thing that I do remember getting participation was when I lettered in baseball in high
Okay,
school. But I didn't actually play the game.
gotcha.
I was just on the team. So, I guess you would consider that, a participation type of thing.
I mean, as
Um,
if we're going to be honest, I mean, as much as it sucks to say yes, Gen X. I mean, you watch TikTok and all that. Oh, and most of the shit's true. We drink from hoses. Our parents did lock us out of the house. We were latchkey kids.
yeah,
Um, my parents were both working full time. I remember starting in second grade. Well, actually, technically it was first grade and kindergarten, but my sister was 4 years older than me, and so by the time I was in first grade, she was in fifth grade. And so by the time
right.
second grade rolled around, she moved on to middle school. So I was in elementary school, and my brother he was 5 years ahead of me. So by the time I was in first grade, he was on his way to sixth grade. So my brother and I were never in the same school. So there was never that. Oh, you're Gordon's son, brother. And my sister moved back to Kentucky into her fifth grade year, and
Right.
so I was never in occupied a building at the same time as any of my brothers or sisters. And
Neither
so,
did I.
and so with that being said, by the time second grade rolled around, and this is where we're free range children. Could you imagine nowadays? I mean, how old's your boy? He's what, fifth grade,
11.
11th. So he's what,
Six.
sixth
He's
grade.
going into sixth. Yeah.
Could you imagine your boy in second grade waking himself up, making himself breakfast, and walking to school and showing up on time, and you and your wife not being home before he even woke up,
Absolutely not.
and then him walking home, making himself dinner, and then you guys rolling in around 7, 8 o'clock at night,
Nope.
and then get upset with him that he ate hot dogs every night? I'm in second grade. What else am I supposed to fucking cook?
Right.
But yeah, so
No.
starting in as a Gen Xer, second grade, and we've talked about this before. I've played the theme song. I would get up, eat cereal, and I'd fall asleep on the couch. And then when the closing credits for the cartoon series of Dennis the Menace came on, that was my secondary alarm clock because I knew it took that amount of time to walk from my house the quarter of a mile to my school.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and I remember even before that when Gordon was probably in elementary school, we lived in Kentucky on that property that's now two truck stops, a White Castles, and a defunct haunted hotel. My mom and her boyfriend would leave, and me, Gordon, and my sister would be hanging out on this farmland by ourselves
Yeah.
until they came home. That's just the way it was. We raised ourselves because they were out trying to find jobs. Because
Yeah.
you got to remember, as bad as the economy was in 2008, in 1980 it was a hell of a lot fucking worse.
Yeah.
You had in the late 70s, early 80s, you had gas shortages, you had the economy was through the floor. I remember for a period of time because my aunt, that's right around the time she came out of the closet. So my aunt and her girlfriend at the time, and my mom and my dad were already divorced, and my dad was working in Cincinnati. And my mom had custody of us because decent jobs are hard to find. My brother, myself, my sister, my three male cousins would all get dropped off at my grandmother, my grandpa's house, and we would stay there until like 5 in the afternoon until our parents came and picked us up because they were, surfing around working whatever jobs they could. And
Yeah.
none of us were old enough in school yet. So that's how young we were. We weren't even, I think my brother just started like kindergarten, maybe
Mhm.
first grade. But me, my cousins, and my sister, we'd all hang out at my grandparents' house all day.
Yeah. Well, and the way that I grew up, it was like I kind of got a little bit of that, but it wasn't as unsupervised, I guess, as what your situation was. Like, yeah, I would have to walk to school or ride the bike or whatever. And, it's interesting too, because when I was a kid, we would actually go outside and play,
Mm-hmm. We were
which
locked. We were literally locked outdoors.
yeah. And the younger millennials and now the zennials, they don't know what outside is.
If you tell your son, walk in there and say, "Hey, go outside and climb a tree," he would look
Yeah.
at you like you had a fucking embolism burst in your head.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember we used to climb trees, hang from them, drop, and do the paratrooper roll and pretend like we were landing in combat, picking
Yeah.
up our guns and run.
In off 10th Street and Southwest Cape, when I was growing up, before like the major construction boom and everything from like the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
there was a section of land between Chiquita and what's that, 15th, I think. And in that section, there was just nothing but woods.
Yeah.
And that was our hangout. That was where we would go. We'd go there. We'd, play like we were in the army, and, we get sticks and all kinds of shit, and,
One
fake
pump
like we
BB
were
gun
shooting
rule.
each other. Do what?
We didn't have airsoft. We had BB guns with the 2 pump rule.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we had BB guns, and, my, my best friend at the time, he had a dart gun, a blow dart gun.
Yep.
And I'll never forget this. I went to his house
Stan had
before
one at
school
K
one
Rock.
day.
We used to blow darts in the wall in our studio.
Yeah. His blow dart, actually, it came with darts, and then it came with those like stun things.
Ooh.
And all it was just like a thick piece of plastic that had a blunt end on it.
I think
And
through my childhood, my formative years, I had probably 7 BB guns in my arsenal at my mom's house in Kentucky.
I had a few. I didn't have like a whole bunch or anything like that.
I want to steer the ship back on course, so let's get back to the millennials and their negative impact on your daily life and our daily lives, or at least from your view. And I think you got some stats to back it up.
Well, I don't have stats so much as I have just the experience of, like, when I go to work every day, you know, I I go to work, I put in hours, I do what I'm supposed to do, and, I go home. And then I have guys that come in that are younger than me, or, later on millennials and whatnot, and they come in and they're mopey and they drag their feet and they don't care, and they just, and the thing that kills me is I want the most amount of money possible for the least amount of work.
Mm-hmm.
That absolutely chaps my ass, especially now. I was kind of like that when I was younger, because I think the millennial mindset is the world's out to get me. And everybody is trying to hurt me, and things like that. And I think growing up, or when I was in my early 20s, and having a kid so young, I always thought the same thing. Like, because I always
Well,
thought, you should have.
that's an interesting point. I don't think people put too much thought into it because it's an old man thought, but
Yeah.
you do change. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me just say this. I'm trying to be vague about this because I don't want to piss anybody off. Because I know somebody who's in this realm. If you call me at 44 and you are literally doing the same thing and you claim to be the same person you were at 22, that is not a positive growth in one's life.
Yeah.
I don't care if, at 22 you had graduated college early and you were already moved on to a profession and already making a career. At 44, you still have better far surpassed. So if you have not changed idealistically, physically, entertainment, literally, I mean, if your lifestyle is essentially get up, go to work, come home, and do the exact same. I don't care if it's playing Xbox. I don't care if it's reading books. I don't care if it's playing flag football with your home. If you're literally, like, if you can look at your Facebook post, and with the exception of, maybe putting on some weight and some gray in your hair, if, like, literally your feed is exactly what you were doing 20 years ago,
Yeah.
that is not a good thing.
Yeah.
You have not progressed in your life at all. And so, yes, people, you will be. I was an asshole when I was a kid. Look, I host a World War II podcast. I have books and books of World War II. But at 18, I ain't joining the military. I don't want to be like, I'm not going to join this organization. It's going to make me shave my head and look like everybody else. I'm an independent. I'm unique. No, I was an asshole
Yeah.
and a narcissistic. And at 32, I had a completely different, and at 44, I have a completely different outlook on military service opposed to what I did back then.
Sure.
My outlook on life, my outlook on parenting, everything was different. But with that being said, there is a natural, healthy change and cycle, which is, and I've said it before, it's why the hippies used to say never trust anybody over the age of 30. Well, why? Because people over the age of 30 have life experience and they tend to form their own opinion on things and they're
Yeah.
harder to brainwash.
Hmm.
16-year-olds are really fucking easy to brainwash. That's why when we were growing up in the 90s and you turn on MTV, they would have all their political nonsense on all their commercials. And they would
Hmm.
shove all, and just like they still do nowadays. That's why you see all these actors and hip hop artists and all these media people trying to tell people how to vote and who to vote for. Those
Right.
commercials aren't intended for 45-year-old dudes. You're
Yeah.
not seeing Keith or Alan Jackson or, old ass fucking country singers talking 50-year-olds. Hey, you'll see them supporting Trump, but they don't have these, you need to go out and vote, blah, blah, blah. No, all that shit's saved for the more easily brainwashed people.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you're right. When you were younger, you had hey, I want the more money for the least amount of work. But with that being said, I don't ever think at the age of 20 I spouted the words, that's not my job description.
Well, and also interesting, uh, out of an article right here. This comes from the New York Post. It was an article about millennials that came out in 2016. And in this paragraph here, it says, first, there was Talia Jane, a dopey 25-year-old Yelp employee who was rightly fired for whining about her low salary on social media.
Yes. What now?
Why?
Now, why was she
Why?
fired?
No, why? No, why whine?
Okay, well, that's a very good point. But let's play the role of the younger. Well, why can't I say that? Okay, well, what sort of problems internally might that create? One, you're given a bad public view on how
Hmm.
the company who's paying your salary treats their employees.
Right.
But B, Bertha, who's complaining about her low salary, might actually be making more than Janine, who started working there 3 months after her, who doesn't have quite the experience. And so now Janine's going to human resources saying, well, I saw Bertha's complaint. She's complaining about making $32,000 a year, but you guys only pay me 28. Or she's complaining about
Hmm.
making $52,000 a year, and I'm only making 42. And so now
Right.
human resources has to deal with that fucking problem.
Right.
And there's two reasons why you don't do it. And three, it affects morale.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are numerous instances, and it happens at the company that I work at too, where people talk about their salary and stuff like that, and it's like, know, because that's just going to cause issues. That's going to make somebody jealous. That's going to make somebody think that they are more valuable than you are, and therefore they're going to go back. Number one, it makes you look bad, and number two, it makes the company look bad and look down on you for that. So, there's been situations like that. I got caught up in a situation like that one time because I thought it was somebody that, you know, I trusted, I guess. And he went behind my back and he went back to the boss and was like, hey, well, how come I'm not, he got a bump, I need a bump, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it's a shitty situation to be in.
I
But
think
anyway,
I think that's another one of the real deciding factors between generations.
yeah,
You hear people say this, oh, in the black culture, they have the snitches get stitches.
yeah,
That may be a black culture thing, but that's also a Gen X thing. We were raised to keep your fucking mouth shut, and if you have a problem with a coworker, you keep that between you and your coworkers. You handle that shit internally. You don't go complaining to the boss that, oh, so and so fucked up. No, you and your coworkers handle so and so. You don't go complaining. You don't go throw them under the bus. I remember when I was working at Wendy's. Somebody was doing something stupid, and the management was complaining about it, and I took the lick for it. I took credit for the dumb shit going on, because one, I was tired of hearing about it, and two, the dipshit employee was just that. He was a dipshit, didn't know any better, and right or wrong, for young 17-year-old Don, the manager was the man, and I'm Gen X. We were raised you don't trust the man, you don't trust the government, you question authority. And so when someone on your team, someone in your generation being harassed by the man, you take a lick. Right,
Yeah.
wrong, indifference. And to
Yeah.
this day, I mean, you'll hear something, you see something. Obviously, if someone's beating their kids or doing something completely morally wrong, that's a different thing. But, if it's something a little more not big deal or whatever, it's like, you don't throw people under the bus, man. You
Yeah.
fucking take them aside and you handle it between you two.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. That's like one of the, and see, that's what's crazy with Gen X is like when it came to the lockdown policies and the masking policies and the millennials and the Gen Xers, I mean the Gen Zers. You got my generation who was raised to question authority. Don't trust the government because our parents were hippies. They don't trust the government.
Yeah.
So we were raised don't trust the government. And to see people just blindly, okay, I'll go home. I won't go to work. I'll wear the mask. I won't do this. I'll go get a shot. No, and to me, it was like I saw the perfect patch today. Like those Velcro patches you put on your backpacks or on your plate carrier or whatever.
Yeah.
It just said free men don't ask for permission, or free men don't require permission. And it's like that sums it up. It's like I don't know if it's because we were raised by our grandparents because our parents were working and our grandparents were the ones who literally fought, and our parents' generations too. People don't think about this. I was talking to a Vietnam vet, and I said, how does it feel to know that your generation was the last generation to actively fight communism in combat? The Viet Cong were communist.
Yeah.
Since Vietnam, we've been having a fight against Muslims and the Taliban. We haven't been fighting communism.
Right.
Fighting a whole different ideology. And so, our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, they fought against socialism and communism. And so, on that face value, what's without getting too deep in the mud, what's the basic face structure of communism and socialism? And that is a overbearing government allegedly takes care of your needs.
Yeah.
Well, when your grandparents who raised you and your parents who raised you fought against that shit, they're going to teach you, hey, as Ronald Reagan said, the most dangerous words in human history or the most dangerous phrase ever uttered in human history is, we're from the government and we're here to help.
Right. Right.
And that's the case. And so that's why you saw so much kickback, especially from the flyover states and the southern states.
Yeah.
New York, Chicago, and them, they tend to lean a certain way and have certain ideologies. Even the Gen Xers, the Gen Xers, obviously you can't paint an entire generation with a broad brush, which I want to get into. The millennials, sadly, they do. You have an entire generation, yourself included, every member's getting painted with a broad brush. But you have outliers, and there's people in my generation who suffer from generational guilt. Maybe there are certain things they don't like about their generation they feel guilty for, or maybe they're afraid of getting old, and so they want to take on the new hip way of thinking.
Sure.
And you see that. But one of the things I wanted to make sure we get into, and I just kind of tipped on it, is I feel and I know, and this is a question you got to ask yourself when you're having these conflicts of personalities, especially when it comes to work ethic. That's a huge one. Huge work ethic. I mean, I do agree with the aspect of we need to start allocating more time to live in our lives. Our parents' generation and a lot of us, our work ethic is all that will 20 years gone by and you have no vacation, you haven't done shit because you've been working so much. So yes,
Yeah.
there is some truth in this feeling that Gen Z and some millennials have that, we need to work to live and not live to work. And there is truth to that. And I think we've all that's the one thing that the lockdowns did. It helped us reevaluate that. And even those of us with a higher work ethic have made more time for family and personal growth and exercise and just doing other things not work related. Yeah. But with that being said, when you're having these conflicts, look at the person and ask yourself, how old are they? Because I think a lot of this shit's coming from 20-year-olds, 24-year-olds. They're not millennials. They're Gen Z. And I think a lot of this stuff, this behavior, this lack of work ethic, this constant complaining, this not me, this ever increasing level of narcissism is actually a trait of Gen Z that's getting appropriated and put on millennials because fucking millennials, that phrase has been uttered for the last 20 years
Yeah.
when it was appropriate 20 years ago because you're talking about 20-year-olds 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Actually 20-year-olds 20 years ago would have been Gen Xers, but 20-year-olds 10 years ago. And so those 20-year-olds 10 years ago are now 30 and they're, I think Gen Zs were born 1997. My daughter was born in 97. She's technically a Gen Z.
Right.
And so we need to make sure that we don't slap on. So actually, no, even older than that. This gets to prove my point even more. When is the Gen Z start? What year?
Ooh. 2000.
You would think that. And it's confusing because you hear millennials. Well, millennials 2000, so millennials were born up till 2000. Gen Z was born between 1995 and 2012. So a lot of these, there you go. 1995 was what? I graduated in 97. That was 25, almost 30 years ago.
I was 3 years old.
So that proves my point even more is that 28 years ago. So if you're having these problems with people damn near 30 and younger, that's Gen Z. And I think millennials are getting slapped with the bad habits of the Generation Z.
Yeah.
And if I was a millennial, I would want it that well known. And here are a few habits that Gen Zers have that people smack on to millennials. So these are a few of these things are just whatever, but.
And here's a fact or a stat for you.
Go ahead.
You asked me about a stat earlier. By 2015, 92 million millennials were born.
Yeah.
92 or were, on the planet.
Excessive.
How many of Gen X do you think there were?
By by when?
2015.
I don't know.
61
million versus how many?
92.
You know why? Because we weren't fucking wearing condoms. I became a father at 17 years old.
Yeah.
I was a senior in high school when I had my first kid. Because we were latchkey kids. As soon as I got my license, see ya, pops. I had a job at 15, I had a license at 17, and I was a father at 17.
Yeah.
By a 21-year-old woman. Nowadays, she would have been brought up on charges.
Yep.
But because I was working, got off work, I once again, I had been waking myself, walking to school since second grade. So by the time I was 17, I was well on raising myself and no parental supervision.
Yeah.
Had access to a vehicle, access to Columbus and the Ohio State campus and all the things that come along with those. and we, people think, and they are people, one of the problems they're having nowadays is the Gen Zers are really, we talk a lot about this LGBT stuff, but what goes along with that, even in the straight community, is they got the hookup culture. It's not relationship. It's not, hey, me and Raven have been going out for 15 years. It's no, I see Raven on Saturdays and I go see Steve on Sunday. And so they have this hookup culture, and then and so much, and a lot of the young dudes are so their sexual sensitivity has been completely annihilated by the fact that they've been watching porn and masturbating 18 times a day since they were 12,
Yeah.
that they don't have a desire to be with physical women. And so birth rates are going down. Committed relationships as a whole are going down. But
Hmm.
a lot of that shit started with my generation. Bisexuality amongst girls, that became a real big popular thing in the late 90s, early 2000s. You would go to the bar all the time and chicks would make out with other chicks just to get responses. But yeah, and so back to the point is Gen Z, a lot of the stuff that's being blamed on millennials is actually a Gen Z trait because those fuckers are 28 now.
Yeah.
Here's a few of the things I pulled up.
Yep.
Excessive social media use. Gen Z is known for their heavy reliance on social media platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and others. Some people might assume that millennials are equally addicted to these platforms, although the adoption of usage patterns are more pronounced in Gen Z, which makes sense because they were born. They were raised up on it.
Yeah.
Short attention spans. Gen Z grew up in a fast-paced digital world of easy access information, leading some to believe that millennials are also struggling with short attention spans, but that is also a primary trait from Gen Z that people tend to blame on millennials. Online shopping, e-commerce, that's really not a big thing. Increased focus on personal branding. Gen Zs tend to be more conscious of their online image and personal branding, while millennials also use social media for their personal branding. Gen Z often linked more strongly to the behavior. That's kind of the same thing. Embracing influence culture. Here we go. Supporting progressive causes. We're kind of talking about this earlier. Gen Z is generally considered more socially and politically active, advocating for causes like climate change, social justice, and gender equality. While millennials are also socially conscious, this activism is often more attributed to Gen Z. But that kind of goes back to the natural progression of humans. We all need something to rebel against.
Yeah.
Even that, what was the old James Dean movie, A Rebel Without a Cause?
Yeah.
My grandparents' generation, they were fighting against communism and socialism. They literally fought. Our parents' generation, you were drafted to fight the Vietnam, and then you had the hippie movement. They were fighting against the establishment and fighting against, they had a cause.
Hmm.
In the 80s, we really didn't have a cause. You had yuppieism and, going to the mall. And with the exception of, and even with the Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm, 9/11, even those wars that's been going on for fucking ever, no one takes up those as a cause to rebel against. And so now, these rebels who need a cause, things are going pretty damn good right now. And so we got dipshits gluing themselves, actually not even gluing. Now they've moved on to using 2-part epoxy mixed with concrete, gluing their hands to roads in Germany. I don't know if you've seen these. I've seen some reports where people are claiming someone may have to have their hands amputated. But more funny to me is one person was complaining. I love this about the Germans. Germans came, the cops came, chiseled around the hand, popped the hand off, said, "Okay, you deal with it. You're free to go." What? You're not gonna take me to the hospital no. You did this to yourself. Take yourself to the hospital. You figure out how to get that shit off your hands. That's not up to us. Our job was to get your ass unglued from the street. You're unglued. You go figure out how to get the epoxy/concrete makeup off of your hand without getting your hand lopped off. And we need more of that.
Yeah.
We need more people being forced to take responsibility for their dumb actions. And that's a phrase that's gone. Being responsible for your actions.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Let's see here. Sustainable and eco-friendly choices, Gen Z, yada, yada, yada. But people complain about the millennials. People complain about Gen Z, as we should. I mean, when we're seeing TikTok videos of a woman asking if the airport or the traveling company, what was the phrase she used? I love this. If they work with people who have timeline deficiency problems, Basically,
Yeah.
I can't show up on time, so you need to organize everything around me. And then
Yeah.
she was offended when people told her to pull her head out of her ass.
Yeah.
I get it. We need to complain. But these people weren't born and raised under their own guidance.
Yeah.
They're not, even though they're dumb, even though they're annoying, they can't take full responsibility for their mindset because they were raised by someone or something. And so I think it's very important that if we're going to have a podcast about how horrible millennials and Gen Zs are, we're honest and ask, well, who's at fault?
Parents.
More importantly, helicopter parents. Are you familiar with
Yeah.
this phrase?
Yep.
I tried to go back because I remember in my deep recesses of my mind news articles that were popping up in God around 2004, about 2005, 2007, and the phrase helicopter parent really started taking on. Well, fuck you too. Taking on prevalence. It's started popping up in the vernacular. Helicopter parent. Well, what's a helicopter parent? First and foremost, let's talk about what a helicopter parent is.
Mm-hmm.
Helicopter parent is a term used to describe the style of parenting where the parent is excessively overprotective and closely involved in their children's life, often to the point of being intrusive and controlling. The term helicopter parent originated in the early 1960s. As I was saying earlier, my generation, Gen Z, we started seeing this from our hippie parents.
Gen X.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Gen X. We started seeing this from our hippie parents. You know, yes, we always didn't talk about millennials getting participation trophies, but if we're honest with ourselves, we got them too, as we talked about earlier. So a lot of this stuff stems from the hippie movement.
Yeah.
So let's see, 1960s and gained popularity. So it was around in the 60s, but it's probably like California and Upper New York, and then it lay dormant like a cancer or a terrorist cell for 30 years. But it gained popularity in the 1990s and 2000s, and that's very important because we were just talking about how Gen Z started in 1995.
Yeah.
Helicopter parents are known for hovering, hence the name, over children, constantly monitoring their activities and intervening in their decisions and actions. They may have good intentions, such as ensuring their children's safety and success, but their excessive involvement can have negative consequences on their child's development and independence. If you watch the Jackass franchise, there's a song that was written by the cousin of Johnny Knoxville that goes along the lines, if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough.
Yep.
I started skateboarding in second grade. Street skating. We had a band of probably 20 hoodlum kids rolling around Rickenbacker Air Force Base or Steeplechase skateboarding. And the rule of thumb for Gen Zers, only time you wore pads and helmets is when you went to a skate park, which with insurance reasons required you to wear pads and helmets. And so if you were lucky enough to have a membership to Sun Sports Indoor Skate Park like my buddy did, when you saw him skating around the neighborhood, he had knee pads on around his ankles because he had to wear them at the skate park, and he didn't feel like taking his shoes off when he came home and skated around the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It was right around the late 80s, early 90s where these helicopter parents started forcing their kids to wear helmets while riding their bicycles down the street, to the point where some municipalities made it a law for children to wear helmets. My generation, we didn't wear helmets unless we were at a skate park that required them. This taught us how to fall. That's right. There is a way to learn how to fall.
Mm-hmm.
As I was saying earlier, we used to hang from tree branches and do the airborne. As soon as your feet hit the ground, you tuck your knees, you roll out of it. Skateboarding and bicycling. Now, I'm not just talking about riding your bicycle. I'm talking about jumping off of kicker ramps and doing tricks and skateboarding, not longboarding, but actually skateboarding, doing ollies, kick flips, bonelesses, acid drops, power slides, all the handrails, rail slides, Smith grinds, 50-50s, all that stuff. You hit a rock, You're going to fly forward. You put your hands down. You roll. Your hands get scraped up. You get a scraped up helmet. But very, very seldomly did your head ever make contact unless you're hit by a car. Why? Because we learned how to fall. We learned to, in the words of the Wu-Tang Clan, protect your neck. We learned how to take a fall. All my years, I skateboarded for 13 years, 15 years. I said that funny because I got numb teeth because I just had a thought. Not once did I ever get a concussion. But the reason I have numb teeth right now is I remember in second grade running through a neighbor's backyard, tripping on a root, chasing somebody, falling and hitting my head on the concrete slab of their fucking porch. And that to this day gives me numb teeth because it hurt. That didn't happen while skateboarding. That happened while running through a yard. So was I supposed to wear a helmet from that point on? But my point is we were such ruffian hooligan assholes that when my neighbor's mom was one of these early helicopter parents, made him wear his helmet while skateboarding, guess what happened?
Fell and busted his face.
No, he stopped skateboarding.
Ah, yeah.
Why? Because everybody made fun of him for being a
wasn't
pussy
cool.
for wearing a fucking helmet.
It wasn't cool.
They may have good intentions, such as ensuring their children's safety and success, but their excessive involvement can have negative consequences on children's development and independence, such as learning how to fall, learning how to get tough. We've spoke about this in the past. You went through boot camp.
Yep.
The obstacle courses at military boot camp up until recently haven't changed a whole hell of a lot. As far as the actual activities, the monkey bars, the climbing over the 6-foot walls, the slide, the slide for life, all that stuff, the running, the rucking. The Marine Corps, is either the Marine Corps or the Army, issue stats on obstacle courses that they've been using for 30 years. And more people are breaking bones and getting stress fractures and more severe injuries on certain parts of the obstacle course that never had that level of injury. Not because the kids aren't physically fit. They've reached a fitness goal to actually enlist. There is a level of fitness you have to have before you actually can enlist, and then when you go to boot camp, they further that activity. The reason these people are getting hurt is because they never learned how to fall. They never took a lick. You see these MMA guys from like the Philippines or South America, they'll go in there and just kick the shit out of somebody's leg and snap their leg in half. That's because part of their training, they'd go kick bamboo with their shins.
Yeah.
And repetitive stress to the bones causes the bones to get thicker. And so our grandparents' generation, our parents' generation, my generation, your generation, we all grew up riding bikes. We all tackled each other playing football. We all clotheslined each other playing Red Rover. we all fell out of trees. We all twisted ankles, got hairline fractures, occasionally broken arm, leg. I never did. But through the rough and tumble, the falling, the impact, the slamming, the bumping, the bruising, our bones got stronger. So by the time you were 18 and you're going through boot camp, your body was stronger and more durable that you could handle the obstacle course. But because the newer generations have helicopter parents, they grew up in air conditioning, playing a lot of Xbox. Maybe they would occasionally go play some basketball at school or whatever. But because a majority of their time is spent in comfortable environments, they're not out running around. They might play the occasional sport, but overall, even the most active kid nowadays is not as active as the laziest kid back in 1995. It's just the point of it's the way our life was.
They're not putting stress on their body.
And because they're not putting stress on their body, their bones aren't getting thicker. And so these same obstacle courses are causing more injuries because literally their frames can't handle it. They weren't tempered. they weren't put through the courses.
Yeah.
And and
And
that's
well,
an
and
issue.
not only that too, but you know, yeah, learning how to fall, but also learning what not
How to
to
get
do
back
next
up.
time.
Oh,
Huh?
exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, you learn your lesson really quick. When you fall and bust your face or you break a bone or something like that, you learn,
Put your hands down next time.
yeah, next time I shouldn't do it that way and maybe that won't fucking happen.
Take a roll next time.
The world is too bubble wrapped today.
Characteristics of helicopter parenting may include constantly monitoring and supervising their children's activity, being overly involved in their children's schoolwork projects and extracurricular activities. Look, there's nothing wrong with supervising homework to make sure it gets done. Sariana did a school project a few years back. She did it on the Triple Nichols, which was the 555th Airborne Division, which was the first all black, including leadership, Army division in history. She didn't read the book, tried to make her read the book. She did very little of the effort, went to school. She brought some of my World War II stuff, but outside of that, when it came to her poster, you could tell that she didn't do the work. I wasn't
Yeah.
going to do the work for her. We tried to encourage her, we tried to help her read, but you're looking around this room and you can see the kids who did the work, the kids who didn't do the work, and the kids whose parents fucking did everything. And it stood out.
Yep.
You knew. Which, so you have these parents who not only get involved, but they are heavily involved. And they
Yeah.
tend to be housewives who have no career of their own. And so they double down on their kids' activity. Being
Yep.
overly involved in their children's, oh, we already read that one. Making decisions for their children without allowing them to take on age appropriate responsibilities. Very true.
That's something that I've been trying to teach my son, recently is since he's getting older and he's starting to be able to make decisions, he's at that age where he can make decisions. I try and, you know, give him the option and make him learn from the decision that he made as opposed to making the decision for him and I know that's going to go right and I know it's going to be the right thing to do, but valuable life lessons.
Valuable life lessons like number 5, shielding their children from failure and disappointment, often trying to remove obstacles and challenges from their paths. That's also referred as a lawnmower parent.
Mm.
Try to give a smooth playing field. And that's very important. We see that's where a lot of this Gen Z stuff comes from. When you see, there's that famous TikTok where the barista at Starbucks was crying because he has to work 8 hours every day, including Saturday. And then you have all these people do what? And I'm like, dude, I work fucking 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's called
Yeah.
life. Get over it. And that is a huge one. I think that is one of the biggest contributing factors to what we see with that and the school system's zero tolerance on bullying. We've discussed this before. I'm not saying we're not justifying allowing kids to get punched in the fucking mouth. That's physical bullying, but the verbal bullying, though it's mean and it makes you feel bad when you think about kids crying, it's the psychological equivalent of us talking about falling, getting stronger. Your bones, when people verbally abuse you and bully you, hopefully you have someone in your life teaches you how to bully back, come back with a quick, snappy answer. There used to be a Mad Magazine book called Snappy Comebacks to Stupid Questions or something. Long before Here's Your Card by Bill Engvall, there was the Mad Magazine Snappy Comebacks to Stupid Questions or something like that. And, once again, I'm not giving this information on the side of the popular. I was in LD classes. That's what they're called, LD, for learning disabled. We didn't have cute little acronyms and all these cute little flowery terms. It was, hey, you're dumb. We're going to pull you out of the mainstream. And that's what they call them, mainstream classes. We're pulling you out of the mainstream classes for reading, science, and math. And we're going to take you down the hall and put you in an old broom closet with a 70-year-old teacher who's getting ready to retire. And all the kids are going to walk by and laugh at you. So trust me, I look like fucking Where's Waldo for half my life. I took a lot of bullying. And that's where my resilient came from. So by the time I got to high school, I suffered fools poorly and fought back verbally quite often. And so trust me, I say this because I know where it's coming from. I've been there, and actually had. I remember like 5-6 years ago, I posted something. I made a comment on something on Facebook, and some girl I went to school with was like, "Yeah, you had such a hard life, looking like you do." And I just posted a picture of my fucking 7th grade yearbook photo. I was like, "You don't remember this?" It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Big old fucking glasses, huge chin, skinny as shit, fucking super nerdy. I was like, yeah, you're looking at me now working at the radio station and this and that. You remember this from fucking 1993? Trust
Yeah.
me, I took my share of fucking of comments. Let's see here. Advocating for the children in school and other settings, sometimes excessively, to ensure their children receive special treatment or advantages. There was articles that came out in the mid 2000s, and I tried to find them, and I was even trying to find archived databases. They actually had stories on like monster.com and these hiring websites where human resources and CEOs were talking about having open house for new employees that were college age. Could you imagine starting your career and having your mom come to your work and talk to your boss about all of your little quirks?
Wait a minute. That kind of open house?
Yes, like open house, like when you went and talked to your kids' parents, school
Yeah.
teachers. They in the mid 2000s for these Gen Zers and late age millennials, they were actually having open house type stuff. And it reminded me, and you got to keep in mind, comedy, there's always realism to comedy. And
I've never heard of that before.
yeah, it was happening. Oh, where did I put that? I thought I put it on H. Oh, here we go.
Oh, Robbie, you scared me. How did your interview go?
Come here, let me tell you about it.
Didn't it go well?
Oh, it was going okay. And then Agent Garfield read me a letter about Crazy Robert and his lucky suit.
What?
I never said crazy.
Mom, what did you do?
She faxed the FBI a letter about how she ruined my lucky suit.
I wasn't sure it went through. It's the first time I ever used a fax machine.
That's the episode of Everybody Loves Raymond where Robert wants to leave the police and go to the FBI, and his helicopter mom decided to send a fax talking about how Robert's interview went bad because she burnt a hole in his lucky suit. he was required. He should be allowed to have a second interview. So here are some of the negative traits helicopter parents have had on these generations in Gen Z. This one makes perfect sense. And when I read this to you, you're going to look, oh, this explains a lot. Lack of independence. Helicopter parents tend to be overprotective and exclusively involved in their children's lives. The behavior can hinder development of independence and decision-making skills in their children as they might not get enough opportunities to face challenges and to solve problems on their own. Absolutely. I remember when I worked for Stan Haney when I first started so many years ago, there was a report out of Washington State from the state police department. Because the helicopter parents, and more importantly, the fact that the kids were raised on cell phones and text messaging, they had to take their new police cadets to the mall and to public places and make them have conversations with complete strangers and maintain eye contact, because these cats have grew up communicating. And you'd see these pictures and jokes all the time of like the family reunion where all the cousins are sitting in front of each other and they're all talking through text instead of talking to each other.
Yeah.
Well, this came to reality. You know, you can't be a cop and solve people's problems if you can't communicate with people. And this was an issue. Where I work now, Josh started working there at 18. He's 19 now. When he first started working there, he would talk like this, very timid.
Yeah.
And me and the guy who no longer works there, I told Dan, I said, hey, phone rings, make Josh answer it. The only way you're going to get through that is through repetition, repetition, repetition. And it's been a year now, and we just had a new young kid, 15-year-old. He writes computer programs at 15, believe it or not. Same thing, very timid. And Josh's dad, who's my boss, was telling the kid's mom, one of the things Don and the guys here did to Josh is they made him answer the phone every day. And Josh has come full circle on his ability to communicate.
Yeah.
I would like, enunciate, Josh. He would talk on the phone. Speak up, dude. People can't hear you. And then he would double down and make it even worse and talk like that on speakerphone. But now he's more comfortable, more assertive, not really assertive, but more confident in his talking ability, and his communication skills have come a long way. And we got this thing with the new 15-year-old. He doesn't talk much, he doesn't say much, and he's not doing customer service based activities, but it would definitely behoove him to have those type of skills.
Yeah.
Decreased resilience. When children are shielded from failure and adversity, they struggle to develop resilience and coping mechanisms later in life. Helicopter parenting can lead to fear of failure and instability to handle setbacks effectively. That's a big one when it comes to careers and relationships. We see how Robbie's mom, helicopter parented him. And that show was on in the late 90s, early 2000s on Everybody Loves Raymond. I don't think Robert finally got married for the second time until he was 40. He was living, he got that divorce and lived at his parents' house until he was 30. In his 30s, he was a cop, but still had very awkward social skills.
Mm-hmm.
This one we see all the time. And to me, it's weird that it was weird to me when I started seeing people when ADHD and anxiety became fashionable. It seems to me that there's way more people posting about having anxiety and ADHD than they actually were. At least in my mind. I'm not a doctor. But I will say this. When my daughter was 18, she graduated high school and I brought her down here. She, Gen Zer through and through, spent all her time on Reddit, the internet, this, that, and the other thing. She was explaining to me how she's allergic to peanut butter. Because on the internet, on the news at the time, that was the big thing. Peanut allergies. No peanut butters. Yep. She got a job at Subway. Told her boss, I can't touch the peanut butter cookies. I'm allergic to peanut butter. Guess what, Mike? She's not allergic to fucking peanut butter. She grew up poor. We've been feeding that kid peanut butter sandwiches since she was fucking out of the womb. But because she spent so much time on the internet, on Reddit, and reading the topics and wanting to identify with the cause celeb, she was now allergic to peanut butter.
Yep.
At the time, she was explaining to me how she was trans. And she was identifying as a dude. And I said, when did you have this realization? About 7 months ago. This was years ago. Did the back math. Oh, right around the time Caitlyn Jenner came out. Gotcha. So the whole thing at that time, cause celeb, peanut allergies, and transitioning. And like I could go down a list of like all, because her and her generation spent so much time on the internet and social justice warriors and taking on social causes. I mean, the trans thing's one thing, but like when you're literally telling your boss you can't touch peanut butter because you're allergic to peanut butter, even though you've been eating fucking peanut butter since you were fucking 0 and you're now 18, you're not allergic to peanuts. You're just so caught up in everything on the internet. So high stress and anxiety. Constant hovering and pressure from parents can lead to increased stress and anxiety levels in children. The fear of disappointing their parents or not meeting their expectations can be overwhelming to some children. And that is true. I'm not going to say the kid's name. There's a very, very, very popular kid in my high school. Straight A's, going off to college. Parents very well to do, lived in a beautiful big-ass house. The year after high school, he killed himself. Because his parents were... It's one thing to have expectations for your kids, wanting them to get good grades. But then there's like the parents, like did you ever see Dead Poet Society?
Yeah.
Where the parents are like just overbearingly insane about the grades and being part of this society and all that. This
Yeah.
kid suffered from that. His parents hovered on him, and his dad rode his ass so much about his expectations for his kid about going to college. He had the good grades, but the pressure that his parents put on him was to that level that the guy killed himself at fucking 19.
Yeah.
And this was like one of the most popular kids in my school. Fucking sad.
Yeah.
Reduce self-esteem. While helicopter parents have good intentions, their constant involvement can involvement and control can negatively impact their children's self-esteem. Children might begin to doubt their abilities and feel that they can't handle situations on their own. Very true. We hear this all the time. I'm not going to go down the rest of this list, but one of the things that you hear all the time is from 20-year-olds especially is, I'm not making enough money. How we can't afford to do this and do that. And look, to a point, to a certain extent of that, I fucking wholeheartedly agree. I could not imagine being 16 years old in a time where gas costs $5 a gallon. Once again, I was talking about as soon as I got my driver's license and a job, I was fucking out. I was never home. Well, gas costs 98 cents a gallon. $5 gave me half a tank of my S10.
Right.
Cost of living, I was only making $4.25 an hour working, but everything was cheaper. Value meals were fucking 99 cents. I mean, you can get a junior bacon cheeseburger for 98 cents. Now they're $2. And so you could live quite well and run around quite well and have a decent time with minimum money.
Yeah.
My daughter moved down here at 18. Her mom was never around, never taught her how to drive. So I taught her how to drive. Her grandfather bought her a 20-year-old Sebring. We shipped it down here. She went out, got her license. You know how much the insurance company wanted on a 20-year-old Sebring for liability? $500 a month.
What?
On a paid-off car because she was 18 and had no driving experience. So you're 18, your car is paid off, it's 20 years old, and you got to come up with $500 a month for insurance?
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. So we hear all kids don't want to drive anymore. Well, yeah, of course not. Fucking gas is $5 a gallon, and insurance on liability costs you more than your damn car payment. I can understand them not wanting to drive.
Yeah. I mean, there are valid points that, I think certain people make, like people can't survive on minimum wage anymore.
Correct.
People can't survive, when I was in my early 20s, I mean, gas was up over $4 a gallon.
That's because Obama was in office.
Right. Gas was up over $4 a gallon. I mean, I had my S10 and, it would cost me $60 to fill up for the week. And, when you're not making, but only every 2 weeks, you probably make $500.
Mm-hmm.
You can't afford to live on stuff like that.
I was at the gas station the other night, and the lady behind me was putting gas in her car, and her boyfriend was in the pump next to me.
Yeah.
And she's like, how much you want me to put in there? He's like, fill it up. And she's like, wow, I didn't know you had that kind of money. He said, I don't have that kind of money. I'm broke as shit. I just bought a house. And she's like, well, I already got $40 in there, and I'm going to have to. He's like, you better slow that shit down. Stop. He's like, I didn't realize it cost that much money. And me, being the old white guy, and I said, yeah. I said, shit, man, half a tank is the new full tank of gas. I said, I cannot tell you the last time I had enough money to buy a full tank of gas. And we all had that conversation. I said, laughing, like, yeah, damn straight, right? Like, yeah. So, I realized, oh, shit, you're at $40. You're less than half a tank of gas. Yeah, you need to fucking cut that shit off because I know I don't have that kind of money. But
I remember it was a struggle just to throw $20 in my tank.
Yeah, that was yesterday.
That didn't get you very far.
But what I was getting to is, yes, cost of living is fucking insane. The fact that you go to McDonald's and buy 3 combo meals and spend $40, it's like, wow, you should be able to get a steak dinner for that.
Yep.
There's truth to that. But even back in the day before hyperinflation and things are so ridiculous, 20-year-olds, you're not supposed to have a cushy life. You're not supposed to be able to afford a $50,000 car,
Yeah.
a nice house. You're supposed to have a shitty piece of shit car, which you're all lucky now because even a Kia is reliable. When I was growing up, you never knew if you're getting to fucking work on time. Either your battery is going to die, you didn't have enough gas, your fuel pump was going to go out, you're going to have a flat tire. Cars just ran like shit. Nowadays, you can go lease a fucking Kia for 99 cents a month, and it's going to start and get you to work every day. It may not have a console to put your elbow on. Your dashboard and your radio may be all red, and you're going to not have all the technical advances. But that fucker will start, and it'll get you to work. So you guys are lucky there.
And it's got AC and stereo, so
and power doors and power steering. Right. But my point being is, you're not supposed to be able to afford everything that you need and want in your 20s. You're supposed to scrape. You're supposed to have 5 roommates. I remember my buddy Frog got his first apartment. He had 5 guys living in a 2-bedroom townhouse. Bill had his fucking mat on the floor in the utility room next to the fucking AC handler because they all split rent. That's just what you did. You had shitty cars. I cannot tell you how many times I've walked to work because I couldn't afford gas. Hell, I moved down here in 2004. I lived over off Cape Coral Parkway. Didn't have enough gas to drive to Fort Myers to go to work. So what did I do? Did I call off work? No, I fucking rode my bike. And then at the end of the day, I'm not a social reject. One of my coworkers gave me a ride home.
Yeah.
There was times I worked at Wendy's growing up. My piece of shit S10 wouldn't start, or I didn't have money for gas. I'd grab my skateboard. I'd walk down the major roads, and then I would skateboard through the neighborhoods and cut through and cut time off. And usually somebody, an old couple, would pick you up and give you a ride. If not, you fucking walked. You did what you had to do. Yeah. And I say all that to say this. The reason that is important is you hear about this all the time with rich kid syndrome, especially children of celebrities in their 20s and their 30s. They never experienced getting their first apartment with the roommate being broke as shit, living off of ramen noodles and making that pizza last. You know, I worked on Stan and Haney. Stan would tell a story about when he was in college. He would get paid. He would buy a bucket of KFC chicken and then make that thing last for 4 days. That was like dinner for 4 nights.
Yeah.
Because you're so broke. And so you hear these stories all the time about these childhood celebrities or these kids of rich parents who they got the brand new car. I remember working on Wendy's, you know, I had to buy my S10 off my dad. When we were moving from Hamilton Township to Grove City, my brother already transitioned to high school in Grove City, and so he needed a way to get there. So my dad bought him a 1991 Chevy S10. Thing was so stripped down, no air conditioning, no power. The thing didn't even come with a rear bumper.
That's funny. That's the year that mine was, a 1991 S10.
It had one passenger mirror, manual windows, no power, nothing, not even power steering. It was a 5-speed. Gordon drove to school, drove around, dicked around, got a job, fucked up, wrecked his car, was acting a fool. My dad took the car away from him. My brother had to go out and get his own car. I turned 18, got my license. Yes, that's right. You're like, wait a minute, I thought you became a parent at 17. Yes, I actually became a parent before. No, I got my license at 17, not at 16. Anyhow, got my license. Did my dad give me Gordon's truck? Yeah. He gave it to me along with a $99 a month car payment. The truck was paid off at that point, but he was teaching me responsibility. Here's a truck. I'm not going to fucking give it to you. You got to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I had to pay my truck payment. I had to pay my insurance payment and buy gas. I had that piece of shit S10. It blew it threw a rod. Now I have no car. Found a 1998 Suzuki Somersault for sale on some farm. Went and talked to my dad. He took me down to the bank. He walked me through getting a car loan through a bank. The guy was selling this thing for like $2,000. So got a bank loan for $2,500. Went down and bought this 1988 Suzuki Samurai. I had that from the ages of 19 to 21. Got married at 21. Samurai, I already had a kid. Samurai was running like shit. Went down to a buy here, pay here lot. Got a sweet ass 1995 Ford Escort LX. Keep in mind it's 2000 at this point. Paying $100 a week on his fucking car. Do the math. That's $400 a month on a piece of shit 1995 Ford Escort LX, but no credit, no money. Buy here, pay here lot. Struggled. Took that car to California after I got my divorce. Drove it around California, paid it off. Threw the clutch out on the 405. Moved here. My dad was selling his 1997 Pontiac Firebird that he bought for my stepmom when I was in high school. Bought it off of him. Sold my Escort. At this point, I'm 23. Still driving used cars from the 90s. This is 2004. Carrie and I met. She had a piece of shit Mustang. Sold it. Got her a Volkswagen. Firebird started falling apart. Back to the buy here, pay here lot. Bought a 2002 Chevy Colorado piece of shit. Thing would stall out. I remember I bought that thing, drove it 4 miles, the battery died. Called the guy who wanted to sell me a new battery. I'm like, how are you not going to just... If I owned a used car lot, every car I sold, I would just add the $200 for the battery to the price of the fucking car.
Yeah.
I would make sure every car that rolled out of that lot had a brand new fucking battery in it. I'd be embarrassed if I just sold somebody a truck. They just gave me all the money they had as a down payment, and now they're calling their parents asking for $150 because they got to buy a brand new car battery because I sold them a car with a dead battery.
Yeah.
I had that car. The thing was a piece of shit. Finally, at the age of 32, working 2 jobs, I was able to go down to a Toyota dealership and buy a base model, basic bitch ass Toyota Tacoma with not even truck tires. It's the one like Advanced Auto Parts uses to deliver parts. It looks like it's got Corolla wheels on it. On that, and it was base model. I mean, the only thing that thing had was power locks, power windows, air conditioning, and cruise control. That was it. Worked my ass off, traded that in, got my other Tacoma, and now I have my Tundra, which my Tundra was used. Long story short, I didn't get my very first brand new car off the lot until I was 35 years old. And that thing was a base model, and I babied the shit out of that and treated it like it was a Lamborghini. Because all the years of me struggling, making sure, having cars constantly break down, and coming where I came from, by the time you finally get to where you can afford stuff, you appreciate it and you take care of it. When you hear about these rich kids, that's right, I was going to say, I was driving my piece of shit S10 that I bought off my dad, working at Wendy's, and this girl I worked with, her parents bought her a brand new Pontiac Sunfire. It was badass. Mint. And she was complaining about it because it wasn't the car she wanted.
Oh, no.
And that car, that was the same time the Chevy Cavalier came out, the new one. Not the Z24. The Z24 was badass, but this was the more futuristic looking one. Kind of looked like the Neon. And so the Sunfire was the cool version of the Cavalier. It was the sportier version by Pontiac.
Yeah.
And like, to be the poor kid that I was, driving my beat up S10 that's already been wrecked and repaired and doesn't even have air conditioning or fucking power locks, to hear this girl whose parents bought her brand new off the lot Sunfire complaining that it wasn't the car she wanted. There you go. She didn't appreciate it. Yeah, she had a job. She had a job for spending money, but she didn't appreciate that car. And you hear that all the time where these kids who parents buy them stuff brand new off the lot, they don't appreciate it. They beat it up. How many times have you seen like that kid like at your school who has the nice car and he's driving down the road, he gets mad, his girlfriend starts punching the radio and shit, and kicking the dashboard and just fucking destroying his car because his parents bought it for him.
Yeah.
He never had the piece of shit that he wasn't sure was going to start. And you need that. You need that strife, you need that struggle. And so you weren't intended to have nice shit until your 30s.
Mhm.
Never were.
I was 29 when I got my first brand new vehicle. Every
6
vehicle
years
prior
before
to
me.
that. What's that?
6 years before me.
Yeah. 29, got my first brand new vehicle off the lot with 24 miles. Prior to that, I traded in my 2000. I think it was a 2000 Chevy Blazer. I traded that in for, I guess you call it a stepping stone car. It was a 2017 Nissan Rogue, a little red car I was riding around, putting the kayak on top. That was, up until now, that was the newest car I'd ever owned, and that was pre-owned.
And the thing is,
And
too, is
then-
I couldn't enjoy my new trucks because I was running a business at that point.
Yeah.
And I was also working at the radio station. I was brand new truck off the lot. I was driving 130 miles a day.
Yeah.
So that's why I had to trade it in so soon for my other
Right.
one.
But yeah, I borrowed my dad had like a 1998 Blazer when we lived in North Carolina. And when I first got my license, he was like, all right, you can drive the car. Just, and it was old, and, it had quirks. You had to make sure, like, I worked on every vehicle prior to this one.
Now, when he
and
says
the
quirks
Rogue.
for you younger cats, that means like, oh, you got to turn the ignition halfway, pump the gas 3 times, and push in the clutch, and then scratch your balls just right to get the fucker to start.
Oh,
every
no,
car
no.
had every car had a quirk, something to it.
Yeah, no, let me tell you this. The fucking gas gauge didn't work.
Oh yeah,
I had to do mathematics and pull an equation out of my ass to figure out how much gas I had.
Oh, my second stepdad, he had a 1988 Ford Escort. Same thing. He actually had a miniature notepad on his homemade dashboard stand where he would
Yep.
write the gas, how much he put in there, how many miles he has, and
Yep.
every day he would, okay, I have X amount of miles. And to fix his check engine light, little black piece of electrical
Black tape. Yep.
cover that bitch right up.
Yep. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough on the Blazer that it actually told you what your fuel economy was.
Fancy.
Now, how accurate that was, who knows? But if you put 10 gallons in and you get 14 miles to the gallon, you could do the math and figure out, okay, this is how long I have until I need to fill up again.
Did the left glove box hinge break off your 1991 S10 glove box?
The hinge?
Yeah. You would know if it did, because every time you open it, it would fall down.
It did.
Yep.
Yeah.
They always broke. And then remember how the headlights had that, it was a horizontal switch you flip. It wasn't on the stick. It was a panel. And you had,
Yes.
that broke too.
Mine didn't break. What's interesting is that because I bought my truck, my truck was $850. It sat for a long time. This dude moved to Kentucky or whatever, and he wanted to sell it, and he wanted like 900 or 1,000 or something like that. Talked him down to 950. My dad drove it home for me because I was working or something like that, and it had a BB shot through the driver window.
Mine ended
And
up
it
getting
had-
shot out at my
Huh?
baby mama's house by somebody shot my window out of the BB gun. My S10.
And had a dead battery, so he had to buy a battery to make sure it ran and started. The window blew out while he was driving it home at about 50 miles an hour down the highway, and the super swampers that were on it were 31 1050 15s, were
Fucking
bald as shit,
Coasting.
had absolutely no traction at all. So I mean, it was all over the place, but I fucking loved that truck.
Yeah,
Loved it to death.
ours was just a skateboard. I mean, I had independent truck company sticker across the windshield. I mean, I love that
Yeah.
truck, but it was beat up. And
Yeah.
keep in mind, I got it third hand. My brother trashed it. My dad was using it to pull a huge pontoon boat that it was not built for. He burnt the clutch up out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And now my brother got it. He did what 16-year-olds do. Oh, man, you can't have that thing stock. He had Jegs traction bars on it. Took out the factory steering wheel, had a Camaro steering wheel in it with no horn. So by the time I got it, the traction bars were been removed, but I couldn't take my driver test in it because it had no horn.
Yeah.
So I had to take my driving test in a minivan.
Nice.
But we needed a horn to make it street legal, so we went to Advanced Auto Parts and got an air horn. So I had to toggle switch, honk, honk. So that made me cool at school. I was like the one of two people actually had an air horn in their truck at school, and so you knew when it was me come by because because I had like a I don't know '89 leather Camaro steering wheel, but the center cap was gone, so you just saw the hooks. So it was just it was beat up, but it was ours. But so to wrap things up, whose fault is it that the millennials and Gen Z are so bad? It's the fucking parents. It's the school system. It's
always the
Nickelodeon and
parents.
it's Disney. It's the media that they're forced to watch. Keep in mind before you yell the phrase "damn millennials," chances are it's a Gen Zer if they're 26 or younger.
Yep.
But so I was watching a show the other day. It was talking about serial killers of the Wild West. And when we think serial killers, we think John Wayne Gacy in modern days. Well, modern definition of a serial killer is someone who kills 3 or more people with a resting period in between. Well, that makes Billy the Kid a fucking serial killer. It makes Jesse James and Frank James serial killers. But I was watching this, and then as the timeline transitioned, they start talking about Babyface Nelson and all that. And I got to realize, oh shit, Billy the Kid was running around in 1885. Sounds like a long time ago. I was born in 1978. Means he was running around doing that silliness 13 years before my grandparents were born. And I had this realization, and I'm even more prouder today to be born in the late 1900s. I know the Gen Zers say that as a stick to us, but I take that with fucking pride.
I think it's cool as shit.
The fact that I was born 30 years after World War II. I was born 82 years after World War I. And 78 years after the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the early 1900s when things started to pick up steam. And so
it's interesting to think that I was only born like 22 or 23 years after Vietnam.
Yep. And so the older I get, the happier the more thrilled I am that I was born when I was. And I jokingly tell Josh when we talk about all the shit going on nowadays, the AI stuff and this and that. And
yeah.
I looked at him and said, hey, you're going to have to deal with this a lot more than I am. I said, I'm going to be around from the beginning of it, then I'm fucking gone. It's going to be up to you and my kids to deal with this shit. You're either going to have to sort it out or you're going to have to live with it. So maybe it's time that you all start paying attention because the ball's in your all's court. And on that note, we're going to wrap it up with this episode of the What's in Your Head podcast. Thank you, each and every one of you, for hanging out. We want to hear from you. Send us an email to info@d-410.com with comments, suggestions, things of that nature. And we want to thank each and every one of you on behalf of myself and Mike. We will talk to you all next week.
This has been a Digital 410 production.